What's up guys, back again with another video. Got a new pickup to show you guys today. This is the Pandoras Box 4. This is the successor to the Pandoras Box 3 multi-cartridge. This one in particular plays 615 in one, and I think the Pandoras Box 3 was around 525, so this one has, let's say, 100 more games to play, including the new IRAM drivers, including R-Type, R-Type Leo, R-Type 2, XMultiply, and some of that stuff. I think there's also IGS PGM and some other bits and pieces as well. But I thought I'd put it through its paces. I'm going to do a comprehensive video on all the games that I like to play, and including a lot of the shoot-'em-ups that are a little bit more obscure. In the past, I've seen videos of people doing Pandora's Box videos, and it's usually they kind of play it safe and do the CPS 1, CPS 2, Neo Geo stuff, but I'm going to really put this through its paces and test out a whole bunch of games. But in any case, this is the unit itself. The Pandora's Box 3, I believe, was a yellow color. This is a blue color, but essentially it's the same thing. I think the hardware underneath is pretty much the same. You got your Jamma edge on there on the front of the unit itself, and on the left hand side you got your VGA connector, and you can basically give it a 31 kilohertz signal. If you plug in a VGA type signal into this jack, if you just use the Jamma harness, it'll assume it's a 15 kilohertz signal. And you've also got a headphone socket there, and on the right hand side you've got a kind of a reset button to reset the cartridge, and a volume control. So it's pretty basic stuff, and I guess it's the same kind of setup as the Pandora's Box 3. I never had a Pandora's Box 3. I had a 2, which I got it in a group buy that I ended up returning because it was actually a bootleg of the Pandora's Box itself, so it was quite disappointing. And of course you get the instruction manual that shows you how to use the cartridge itself and how to configure it. So without any further ado, what I'm going to do is plug this in and test some games out. When you first turn on the Pandora's Box 4, you're greeted with a splash screen and a very pointless 30-second video clip intro, as you can see. And does anyone notice how similar to Street Fighter 4 logo the Pandora's Box 4 logo looks? I certainly have. Once you get into the menus, things start improving. It's easy to navigate. The left and right stick movements will page up and page down, and selecting a game is quite simple. Let's do some testing. The first game I try out is Ghouls and Ghosts, the classic Capcom CPS 1 side-scroller. It's important to mention that I have a PCB of this game, so I know what I'm looking for. Now the first thing I notice is the screen tearing. It's really annoying. They've had 4 revisions of the Pandora's Box and they still can't figure this out. This is unacceptable. The sound effects are really good too, which makes this a real missed opportunity. I feel like if they fixed the screen tearing, this game would play really well. As it stands, it's pretty hard to recommend it so far, but I'm going to move on and see what else is on the cartridge. Next up is R-Type. Again, this is a game that I have a PCB of, and I must say I'm quite impressed with this one. The sound is pretty good. The screen tearing is still present, but because there's a lot less as far as the backgrounds go, I can hardly notice it. This is a pretty good playable experience in my opinion. Next up is R-Type Leo.
3, 2, 1, let's go.
Frame rates are good, and the tearing is barely there. So far so good. The biggest problem with this game is the sound effects. They just don't sound right. I don't have an original R-Type Leo PCB, but I do know what an authentic sound should be. And this isn't it. Otherwise, it plays really well. I'm quite surprised. The R-Type games are new to the Pandoras Box, so this is a welcome addition. I do know FBA itself has some problems with the R-Type Leo driver, so later stages there may be glitches, but at least level 1 plays really well. I just wish the sound effects were better. It would be almost perfect if they were. Next up I try R-Type 2. Just like R-Type, this plays really well. It sounds good, and the tearing is minimal. Overall, it's a very good playable experience. Next game I try is XMultiply, another RM driver. Again, this plays really well. Scrolling is very smooth and the sound is great. Things are looking pretty good for the Pandoras Box 4. So far, I'm pleasantly surprised. Still, there's a bunch more games that I still want to try out. I've seen some videos of the Pandoras Box 3 and 2, and it seems like everyone sticks to the well-known CPS 1, CPS 2, and Neo Geo stuff. I kind of want to try some different things to see how well this cartridge really is. Next game I try is Raiden. I noticed the scrolling is a little bit jerky, a little bit of screen tearing. But again, plays pretty well. Doesn't seem to be any slowdown, and overall, it's a pretty decent experience. Not too bad. Sound effects are great too. Now this is where things take a little turn for the worse. This is GunNail, another shoot 'em up. The scrolling is superb, it's silky smooth, it doesn't look like there's any screen tearing at all. The biggest problem is the sound effects, they're absolutely terrible. They're so bad I can't play this game. It's such a shame because the scrolling and the gameplay is almost spot on. This is a real missed opportunity. I just wish they put some more time and effort into this one. Next up is FireHawk, the shoot 'em up game from 2001. A lot of problems with this game. First of all, this is a vertical game and the screen is stretched horizontally. Unacceptable. The screen blurriness is really bad too. Game plays well and the scrolling is good, no tearing. But again, this is very disappointing. One to avoid. Next I try out 1943 Kai. This plays really well, sounds good and it looks good, especially considering the 60-in-1 where the sound effects were really bad, I couldn't play the game. This one's pretty good. With all the vertical shoot 'em ups, the biggest problem is lack of screen rotation. Unfortunately you can't rotate the screen no matter what you try. And that filter is still present and it's annoying. It's very noticeable on a lot of the vertical shoot 'em ups. Next up, I try 19XX, the CPS2 hardware game. Again, another vertical shoot 'em up. This plays really well too. Sound effects are good, scrolling is great, screen tearing is very minimal, and overall plays really well. Once again, the screen filters really hurt this game. And of course, we can't test a Pandora's Box without DoDonPachi. Once again, plays good, sounds good, pretty good experience. I just wish that damn filter would go away. I wish there was a way to turn it off.
Now, are you ready?
Next up, I try Esp Ra. Again, I have this PCB, so I'm being pretty critical about it. But overall, it's a pretty decent experience, no complaints at all. Once again, good scrolling, good sound effects, and the gameplay is quite accurate. Battle Garegga is next, and this one's pretty decent too. The biggest thing that hurts this game for me is the scrolling. It's a little bit jerky. Also, as you can hear, the sound effects are quite loud and a little distorted. You can adjust it with the volume control on the Pandora's Box, but it's still not quite right. Next up is the IGSP gem hardware. This is DoDonPachi DOJ. This game runs really bad. You can tell that it's not running at full frame rate and they're frame skipping, and it really hurts the experience. Also, the filtering makes the game a blurry mess, especially when there's so many things going on at the same time. The sound effects are decent, but otherwise this is very poor. Next up is B-Storm, again on the IGSP gem hardware. It starts out promising, but the screen tearing is already present.
Power up.
The sound effects about right, and initially it's a really good experience. I'm quietly confident, but wait for it. There's the slowdown, and it's terrible. It absolutely ruins this experience.
Power up.
Next up is Batsugun, and initially I've got a really good feeling about this. The sound effects sound really good. It's a little loud, but I'm quietly confident. The game plays pretty well, and it's pretty faithful to the original PCB that I have. But I start to notice that the sound effects are too loud and too distorted, and it starts to get on my nerves. This is a great soundtrack, and it's absolutely ruined. I really can't play this game. I have to just go back to the PCB or the Saturn version. This is a missed opportunity once again. Otherwise, the game plays really well. It's quite smooth scrolling, and there's no slowdown. Now, if I needed any proof that the Pandora's Box 4 was using FBA instead of MAME, this is it. This is Ghouls and Ghosts. It's an absolute mess. The game doesn't run too bad, the screen tearing is noticeable, but the problem is the sound effects. They're horrible, and I know this because it's exactly the same in FBA. They're really loud and really distorted. So I quickly move on to Kung Fu Master. This one plays pretty well. The sound effects are not quite right, but the scrolling is good and the playability and the gameplay is almost spot on. Once again, it's that damn filter. Next up, I look at CPS3, Capcom hardware. This is a lot more CPU intensive than CPS2 and CPS1 and uses the SH2 CPU instead of the 68000. Overall, it doesn't run too bad. This is Third Strike. It looks like there's a little bit of frame skipping, maybe one frame, but the game plays pretty well. Sound effects aren't too bad, a little bit distorted, but overall, I'm quite impressed.
Fighters ready. Engage.
Sengoku 2 on the Neo Geo played pretty well too. Everything's pretty good, just that filter once again. And of course, I gotta try out Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. This plays really well. Doesn't seem to be any slowdown, no jerkiness, no tearing, no anything. Sounds really good too. I don't have a kick harness, so I'm only punching here. I'm getting my ass kicked. But this is actually a really good experience. And if there's one reason to get a Pandoras 4, this could be it. I know there's a lot of Super Turbo fans out there. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with the CPS2 emulation. There are some exceptions though. And this is what I'm talking about. This is GigaWing for the CPS2. It plays great, the scrolling is really good, and there's really no screen tearing. Just a little bit. The biggest problem is the sound effects. They sound horrible. It's really loud and really noisy. Unacceptable once again. Really ruins the experience of the cartridge. This could have been a really good game. In the end, this is one that I will never play. Just listen to that. In the end, I just had to turn this game off and try something else. Next up, I tried Marvel vs. Capcom. Again, CPS2, and again, it's really good. The music is great, the sound effects are awesome. And this game moves around a lot of scrolling going on. Doesn't seem to be any frame skipping, and the screen tearing I can't even tell. This is probably the best game that I've played so far on the Pandoras Box 4. It's almost perfect. I do say almost, because that screen filter, that just ruins the experience. But still, this is a pretty good experience. I have the CPS2 cartridge, and I'm pretty happy with this. Cadillacs Dinosaurs for the CPS1 is decent. Plays really well, but the screen tearing is a lot more noticeable than the CPS2 driver. Not really sure why. Still, it's a pretty good experience. The sound isn't terrible. It's way better than that bootleg Cadillacs Dinosaurs PCB that I've seen being sold in Hong Kong for about 80 bucks. But still, nowhere near as good as the dedicated MAME setup. Well, I gotta try out Final Fight. Seems like a staple for all these multi-cartridges. Again, CPS1, and again, the screen tearing's there. Sound effects aren't too bad, they're a little bit dull sounding, and the mix isn't quite right. Next up, I gotta try Konami Driver. I can't seem to find any Ninja Turtles games on the Pandoras Box 4. A glaring omission. I'm pretty sure the Pandoras Box 3 and 2 had them. In any case, here's the Simpsons. And once again, I gotta say, it's not the best emulation. The problem is the screen blurriness. It really shows up in this game. I think it's because of the light color palette. Plays pretty well and the sounds are decent. Screen tearing and the blurriness really just hurt the game. Now this is where things get really messed up. This is Golden Axe. It starts out really well, the sound effects seem really good, the game scrolls well and it plays well. But here's the problem, the sampled sounds. Just take a listen. They're way too loud, and they get annoying real fast. I can't really take much more of this game, I have to turn it off. I tried another Sega driver to see if it's just a fluke, but Moonwalker has the same problem. The music is good and the game is good and it plays well and it scrolls well. The problem is the sound effects, they're just too loud. Being someone who worked on FBA drivers, I never remember this being a thing, so I'm not really sure what's happened here. It seems like the drivers have been fiddled with in order to get some processing power in order to make these games work on the cartridge at a decent frame rate. It's really disappointing. This is the last game I try out before I decided to wrap it up. Here's my conclusion of the Pandoras Box 4. In summary, I would probably say that for 70 bucks on AliExpress, is it really worth the money? I don't know. I mean, maybe. If you're not interested in setting up a dedicated main type setup, then I would say probably it's worth a look. But if you really want to emulate an arcade system in an arcade cab, I would spend some money and get a MAME set up. And, you know, with PCs and low power PCs being as cheap as they are these days, Raspberry Pis, things like that, there's really no reason why you couldn't do it like that. But for convenience sake, you've got 615 games in one cartridge. It's not the worst thing in the world, but there are a lot of disappointing things about it. And my top 3 most disappointing things with the Pandora's Box is A, the blurriness filter, which really just ruins the experience. Even when there are some ROMs that play really well, and typically speaking, the CPS2 ones play quite well, the blurriness filter really just kind of ruins it. The second problem I have is the screen tearing, and I mentioned that quite frequently in my review of the different games. The tearing itself is just unacceptable. We've got a device like this, and I haven't opened it up, but I'm assuming it's got a ARM CPU that is a dual core or a quad core type setup. Yeah, sure, it's low power, but you could really think it could easily run emulated 68,000 type games at full speed with no slowdown, with no frame skip, and with no screen tearing. But apparently it can't, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. And the third one, of course, is the sound. Some of the games sound really good, but most of them sound really bad. If you want a quick and dirty 601 type setup without having to worry about setting up a MAME PC, then it's probably worth a look. But just remember, you get what you pay for, and in this case, it's not always that great. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.